I'm Jeremy Devins, and welcome back to the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast. Today, Saturn is going retrograde for about 5 months in the sign of Aquarius for the last time for about 27 years. So, what does this mean for you? What's going on? What are the major themes over the next 5 months you can work with? I'm going to share about that, and you'll want to know your own rising and moon sign to understand this. You can get your free Vedic birth chart at quietmindastrology.com. And I highly recommend you also get charts for people close to you so you can understand the major themes they're going through: spouse, children, friends. So it's something I actually keep myself and I look at regularly when I'm interpreting transits and understanding things. And something that's helped me a lot over the years in understanding myself and others through astrology is just knowing other people's charts and knowing my own chart. So, as I talk today about the different signs, if you don't have that sign, you probably know someone who does, and you can better understand the process and the lessons and the karma they're working through right now. So, super useful for that. And I'll talk about the major dates to look out for and the major themes, starting with the more general for everybody. And then I'll go sign by sign, and I'll have timestamps in the description below. So first of all, there's a little check-in from me, posting this a little late. I got very sick, and I'll just share a little life update for myself and let you know where I've been at. And turns out the kidneys are very sensitive, and getting a kidney infection is extremely painful. I did not know this. Some of you may have had this before listening, but oh my gosh. So I think it was a bacterial infection that came through here. I live in Mexico now, and as an American living in Mexico, there's a lot more sensitivity in the stomach. And even with a lot of precautions, it's still very common to get sick from water, basically. And if the food is not handled right, if you go out to eat, or if you take a shower and that water gets into your system and everything. So I normally have a lot of intention about water and water filters and stuff like that, but that is harder to get here. And even Amazon and things like that are just harder to get here. So I let that slip and didn't have the water filters on in my shower and my sinks and things like that. So that's something I'm definitely going to do now. But just for me personally, this awareness of this energy of needing to rest and slow down, and also wanting to be very productive and creative. And I've mentioned in recent episodes, like filtering through thousands of notes from the past few years and all these things that I've been learning and little notes I've taken and ideas I've had, and processing all that down to what is actually necessary now, and deleting a lot of stuff, eliminating, consolidating. And that is all a very deep filtration process, which is what the kidneys do. And there's no coincidence in that sense of like the part of my body that is responsible for filtering is susceptible and more vulnerable to disease when I'm in this intensive time where I spend pretty much an entire week working like all day, every day, doing this filtering process. And I really enjoyed it. It was very fun, but also very challenging. And by the end, I was like spent. I didn't want to do it anymore. And my body also had the repercussions of that. So I think of this, it's interesting. People like Steve Jobs, who famously had liver issues, and he was known to be very angry and aggressive in his work and with people close to him. And the liver has to do with processing anger. And that's where his body had this response. So our bodies have these different organs of different processes that are not just biological and digestive and things like that, but also energetic and emotional. And the kidneys also are to do with water and emotions. And I was feeling a little blocked in expressing my emotions recently before this disease happened. And once it happened, I felt so much because the kidneys, when you have a kidney infection, they're just so tender, and you feel everything dramatically. So I was able to access my emotions more and able to cry and release and express. And that felt really good, but also kind of had to reach this critical point where I was in extreme pain to let it move through. And it doesn't always have to be that way. So even me, somebody who's been doing yoga practices and doing my best to listen to my body for many years now, there's always lessons and things to work through, and no one's immune to this. But I also always look at it from the state of, well, what is this teaching me, or why am I creating the circumstances where this would happen? If I am creating them, if I am here to learn something from this, what is the lesson? Rather than sort of powerlessness or victimization of, oh, this sucks, why me, and woe is me. I could go that way, but I am just curious of like, what is the lesson in this? And it's interesting that to heal, and one of the natural practitioners I worked with to get support in this said basically you just need to lay down, and the kidneys will heal when you're laying down, not when you're up, not when you're sitting, not when you're walking around. Just lay down as much as you can. And that's kind of what I've been wanting to do in the last week beforehand, but I was in this very productive, energized mode still. But I felt like I maybe should lay down more. And sometimes I like to just lay in bed and work in bed like that, or just lay and not work and just relax. But even when I'm working, like it's possible, working from home, I can work from my bed, and I enjoy that too. So either way, I needed to lay down a lot for the last several days. It's almost like sort of ticking time bomb. Like I thought of the movie Speed, which is kind of the opposite, where you can't go below 50 miles per hour or the bus explodes. It was like I could not get up or my kidneys would explode. It's like I had to lay horizontal in bed as much as possible the last few days, and still able to honor my commitments as best I could. But then my internet went out, and I had no internet, nothing on my phone, no computer, and clients to meet with. And now I needed to hustle a bit and figure this out because where I live is very remote. And to get that kind of stuff fixed takes at least like a week. Very fortunate I was able to find an option. Somebody to borrow me a Starlink cable. That didn't work though. So I had to go and bring that back. And I had people helping me with some stuff, but some stuff I needed to go out and drive around on the bumpy roads with my motorcycle, and my kidneys throbbing, not the best. But I also, I really think it's very important for me to honor my commitments. And if it's like a short notice, I don't like to cancel things unless it's absolutely necessary. And from what I understood and what I read, like my kidneys would be okay, just more painful, longer, but I'd be okay. So I chose to do that and chose to look for a new Starlink system, which is also very difficult to find here. And I did find one. Was able to buy a whole new system, new account, and now the old one is going to take a while to get a replacement. So able to get back online within 2 days, but had to pay a little bit of physical price on that, and that kind of sucks. But I also is a choice, and something that just deep in me where it's like I want to figure the thing out. I want to persevere, and there's a big lesson for me in that of just like needing to rest more and prioritize that. And I'm not sure exactly what caused the infection. It might have been actually bone broth that I got locally that may have been somehow had E. coli in it, and that can cause kidney infections, of course. Uh, 80, 90% of the time, that's what causes the kidney infection is E. coli. So that may have been it, but it may have been something in the water here. So either way, I am just being more proactive and aware of that part now. And also the energetic part of I probably pushed myself too much of doing a full week of that filtration process. Like I was dreaming about spreadsheets and notes, and like that's all I was thinking about besides the other, actual commitments and clients and things like that I was working with and the containers I hold. So probably pushed too much, but I tend to do that. I tend to like with my Aries sun and all my Aries energy, want to just like go forward and just finish the thing I started. Just have that initial spark, and it's hard to maintain that with the Aries energy. So to actually get it to completion, I think it requires like riding that spark for a while, but also needing to know when to pause and rest and recover. And I thought I did that okay, but caught up a bit with me with all the things of the filtration, the difficulty in expressing my emotions, and then possibly just having contaminated water or food here. And then the vulnerable organ in my body was the kidneys. It's not the liver, where I don't have the anger issues of Steve Jobs or people with liver issues, where that may be more common. But and also maybe other factors for people with liver issues, of course. But yeah, so that's some lessons I took away from this of just being a little more proactive on these things. And I've, since I moved here, been thinking about, and I should probably get a water filter, but it's kind of a hassle to order stuff online and takes forever and all this. But it's actually, I've always said it's very important, one of the most important things. But I did not do that when I got here. And I've been boiling my water a lot. That helps clean it, but then it's dead water. So it's not the best either. So there's things I know to remineralize the water. Even just having lemon or lime in there is helpful as well, and salt. But something I'll be more proactive and intentional about. And I think with the new moon in Mula, talked about in the recent episode, excuse me, the full moon in Mula, I talked about recently how that Niriti deity can be destructive and take away things that need to be taken away. And then Saturn moon conjunction shortly after that, which is typically two of the more challenging days of the month. So through that process, and then moon Pluto also before that, moon Rahu with that as well. And now moon Mars in Aries, starting to get back into my spirits to record and create again. So yeah, I went through some challenging moon transits over the last week for everybody. So maybe you've felt that in some way yourself personally, and also the summer solstice or the solstice, winter solstice, if you're in the southern hemisphere, where it's the accumulation of a dosha. So here, that's an accumulation of the pitta dosha in the summer solstice. So everyone in the northern hemisphere, it's an accumulation of the pitta energy in your body that needs to move in some way. And like a kidney infection, there's like usually burning sensation, inflammation. Those are pitta issues. So my body was releasing, needed to release some of this pitta issue. And that went through what was the weakened organ in my body through the recent stuff, like I mentioned. So it expressed that way. For you, maybe your skin, maybe your liver, maybe other organs. So everyone is typically going to have certain sort of weak points in their bodies. Maybe it's muscular, maybe it's organs, things like that. It's important to be aware of those weaknesses. And I've actually been aware of some low back tenderness for quite a while, but didn't actually think about my kidneys because I've never had any kidney issues. But I learned a lot about the kidneys now and released that excess pitta energy there. But if you're curious, some things that are very helpful for kidney health: dandelion root. I think it's herba ulsa. I think that's the name of the herb. Uh, Neem is very good for it. Luckily, neem grows a lot around here, so I was able to get some fresh neem and chew on that and put it in teas. And D manos comes from cranberries, or just eating cranberries is great as well. Horsetail as a tea, very helpful. It's a diuretic and helps cleanse the whole renal system. So the kidneys, urethra, everything, the bladder is helps. The horsetail helps clean that out. So that's an amazing herb, and I use that tea a lot. So those are some of the things I've learned that are very helpful for clearing the kidneys out. And now that I'm more aware of this, it's actually something I'm going to do regularly, of some sort of kidney cleansing process, more of a water fast and with these herbs. And now I'm excited to do this for the other organs as well. Something I haven't done before, and I've actually wanted to learn more about herbs and the healing principles and all this. And all the Western medicine we get is essentially they figure out something in an herb that helps heal something, and then they try to get it to the exact one thing that causes that effect, and then they can sell it as a pharmaceutical. But it grows in nature, and nature is our medicine. So I've only used natural remedies. I did take ibuprofen a couple of times for pain. The first time I got it, it was so intense, and I had no idea what was happening. But I didn't have anything else on hand. But try to minimize that when I can, and only when absolutely necessary. And yeah, all the natural herbal stuff has helped tremendously. And just rest, of course, and not doing so much filtering work. And that's something I've learned in the last week. Hopefully, that's helpful for some of you. And just wanted to share, a little update about me. And also on a personal level, I just otherwise things are very good. I'm very happy, very grateful. Life is good here in Mexico, and I'm really enjoying the work I'm doing as always. And we're just about to graduate the fifth class of the Vedic Astrology Mentorship in a couple weeks. So that's very exciting. And then the sixth class will be starting in August. And more details coming up on that soon. If you're interested in going real deep into understanding yourself and others through Vedic astrology, that is the way to do it. And that is opening for enrollment later this month in July. And the next episode will be the July horoscope. And I'll talk about how you can learn more about that. And I'd love to see you there if you're interested in it. You can join the waitlist now at quiet-astrology.com. That's the next big offer I'll be making. And of course, now let's talk about what's going on right now in the transits and coming up now for the next 5 months. So, starting from Sunday, June 30th, 2024, Saturn goes retrograde in the sign of Aquarius in Purva Bhadrapada, the last nakshatra before it moves on to Pisces in 2025, never to return to Aquarius for 27 years. So this retrograde begins June 30th and it ends on November 15th, 2024. And so that's when Saturn progresses forward, retracing the steps in Aquarius and then moving on to Pisces in 2025 and staying direct and staying in Pisces from 2025 to 6 to 7, then moving on to Aries in 27. So this, what does it mean? What does it mean in general for everybody, for all of us? How can we learn from this transit? Well, Saturn in Aquarius happens every 27 years roughly. And the last time was 1994. And that was when the internet started to become a big popular thing. And it started to become this normalized thing now of like getting online. Now, fast forward in this recent Saturn in Aquarius, AI has become this big normalized thing. And it's the same kind of energy of like, is it going to replace all of our jobs? How exactly do we use it? What exactly is it good for? Like, how, where does it fit in society? And we're figuring that out right now. And it'll start to make sense in the next couple of years. Same way around by like 2000, mid 2000s, the dot com internet stuff started to really make sense. It took like 10 years. But everyone was really starting to get online. I was online in like 1995 myself. I've always been a big tech nerd, so I was on top of that. Even as a kid, I was 9 years old. Very fortunate to get access to a Windows 95 computer, and I loved it. So cool. So that's where we are now in AI. And I'm the same way, adopting it and like applying using ChatGPT regularly. It's got a lot of flaws, but a lot of really cool stuff. And it's going to be super useful. And then things like Tesla's autopilot cars are using AI, super advanced AI that is kind of under the radar a bit. But that's also going to become very common in cars in the not too distant future where they can be self driving and autonomous. So lots of this AI stuff on a big picture, right, is just going to affect everyone's jobs. And it doesn't mean doom and gloom, though. It's just going to make new jobs. So just the same way the computer didn't replace everyone's jobs, it just made new jobs that required knowing how to use a computer. Same thing with the internet. I think the same thing will be true for AI. It's just that the people who know how to use AI will be needed in the workforce. So it's a valuable skill to learn now while it's still in its early development and everyone's still figuring out what it is. and it will certainly replace a lot of jobs. Like it can do a lot of amazing things with coding and website design and problem solving and math and all sorts of stuff. It's getting better at math, and this will in tutoring. So a lot of things will certainly be replaced, but new jobs will open up and new things will come. But we don't quite know what that is yet, and nobody can answer that. But it's very clear that AI will be a big part of it, and that's why everyone's just throwing money into AI and investments and stuff like that because they don't know exactly what, but something important is coming out of it. So, in your own field, finding ways that you can integrate it and utilize it. For me as an astrologer, I test it pretty regularly to see like, could I just put a chart in there and it could read a chart like I can? And no, some basic things, yeah. So if you're trying to rely on AI for astrology readings, I can tell you it's probably inaccurate like 70% of the time, somewhere around there. So it's not reliable yet. But some basic things like, okay, what does Jupiter and Taurus mean? Pretty good. What does Mars and Aries mean? Pretty good. And what is Bharani and Nakshatra? Pretty good. These basic things, yeah, it's pretty good. But when you start to synthesize things and do the holistic perspective that astrologers do, it's not so good. And it just takes a lot of if this, then that, what about this, and that's aspecting this. And a real astrology reading is quite complex, and it does take quite a bit to learn. And they say in the old text, it takes 9 lifetimes to master. So I try to help at least with one lifetime in my mentorship. And I see people able to do it pretty fast, actually, with the right training and just knowing where to look. So I do get pretty amazing results with the students I work with. But AI doesn't quite know all those tricks yet, but eventually it probably will. It probably will know all the tricks of everybody's field and do a lot of really cool stuff. So there's that factor. And then what else? Saturn in Aquarius, it's progressive, it's innovative. So it's bringing in new ideas, new movements in society. We're also in the Pluto and Capricorn time. And that is very important to consider because that is the US return, the United States return to where it was in the chart of the United States founding in 1774. So the US is going through major changes, major structural changes, major need for new ideas, new ways of doing things, possibly a new constitution, new government reform. Everything is very bureaucratic and complicated at this point and not up to speed with technology and the tools and resources now. And it's just full of lobbyists and special interest groups who are really controlling the government and all sorts of stuff like that. And everybody knows it, and everybody knows it's corrupt and doesn't trust it. And it's just wild that it's Biden and Trump again somehow in the election in 2024. And I would guess that a real survey, probably 80% of Americans don't want either of those people. So we're in that place where it's not quite working, and it's gonna still go on until 2040. This Pluto and Capricorn thing, but with Saturn and Aquarius, it's brought forward some new ideas, new ways of thinking about things, the awareness of these problems, and the need to change them. So there's that part of society as well. And on a personal level, it's an opportunity to learn new things about yourself, explore new ways of expressing yourself, new interests, new hobbies, new creative ways of expression, new ways of being your true self and self awareness. So it's a wonderful time for personal growth and transformation. Purva Bhadrapada is ruled by Jupiter, which is over in Taurus, and Rohini, ruled by the moon. So Saturn being ruled by Jupiter right now throughout this next 5 months, and it's been going for a while and will continue to early 2025. There's this element of a lot of wisdom to be gained, a lot of lessons to be learned, but not so pleasantly. So Saturn is the teacher that gives us the stern, hard lessons. Jupiter is the more benevolent teacher that teaches through allegory, lessons, creative ways, helpful ways, more generous kind of ways. These two energies working together, it's a little bit like a good cop, bad cop kind of scenario where we're getting good and then bad. And it seems like this is good, seems like that's bad. And on the global level, on the political level, personal level, there's like this sort of mixed energies happening with this. Ultimately, it's all lessons for us to learn and grow, but it's a little bit of a kind of mixed energy of it's difficult lessons, things we need to go through, and we're grateful we went through them, but it kind of sucks, and we needed to go through them. So that's Saturn and Jupiter kind of energies working together here of the Saturn and Purva Bhadrapada energy. And when Saturn goes retrograde, it appears to be moving backwards in the sky. Of course, it never actually goes backwards. That's just an apparent retrograde motion from the Earth. And what it means is, on an energetic level, those qualities require us to slow down a bit, to go more internal. And we've got Pluto retrograde as well with this. So I mentioned that in recent episodes, going internal in our psyche and our psychology, deeper understanding of ourselves. Saturn retrograde has us go into our routines and have more internalized routines. Meditation practices, yoga practices, things like this are very favorable. And going back to teachers that have helped us and we've learned from. Overall, this is a time for going back to lessons that you've learned, mistakes that you've made that you can learn from. And you might need to repeat a pattern again to get the lesson and finally make the change. There's a big potential for change with this in Purva Bhadrapada, which again is the last nakshatra of Aquarius. So it's the last section to work on this part of this sort of transformation for ourselves here. So it's time to go back, lessons you've learned, go back within meditative practices, and you can finally break the cycle, break the pattern around this area of Aquarius. So you can look where Aquarius is in your chart, in that house, any planets there, relationships there, to understand how this is affecting you personally. So for me personally, it's in my sixth house of health, and Jupiter is there. So again, having to learn these lessons about health, my kidneys in this example. So going back into these things that are deeper, more internal, require your attention. So, as the astrologer trying to foresee somewhat of the future, I need to experience somewhat of the future in the present tense so I can kind of prepare and know what's going to happen. So, that's part of my karma. So, I've experienced this karma, this pain of the kidneys. Of if you got Aquarius in your sixth house, if you're a Virgo rising or moon, basically, that's Aquarius in your sixth house. So look where Aquarius is in your houses to see what area is affected for you. You're going to need to learn some lessons there, not necessarily as painful as mine, but certainly challenging. Saturn does not make things easy, but it grounds you, it humbles you, it matures you, helps you get a more grounded perspective on life and learn difficult and important life lessons. So, what lessons are they going to be? What house is it for you? Well, let's look at the North Indian style birth chart and the sign by sign horoscopes. So, first, we're going to look at Aries ascendant and moon. So, if you have Aries ascendant or moon, Saturn is going retrograde over your 11th house. This is your house of gains from your career. So, going back to what has worked well for you to earn income in your career that you might want to return to and go deeper and double down on that to increase your income. Any friends or networks that you've connected with over the last several months, really over the last 2 years through this transit, that you want to reconnect with, go deeper in those friendships and connections, can be great resources and support systems right now. And you yourself could be a great resource to them. You may find yourself needing a little bit more solitude, and those friends that you can share solitude with, you'll find more comfort with. So it's a good time for deepening friendships like that, where you can go within together from June 30th to November 15th, 2024. For Taurus, ascendant and moon, this Saturn retrograde is going over your 10th house, a time to go back over things that have worked well in your career. If there's been a business idea or project you've started that you want to return to, go deeper with, improve upon, this is a great time to do it. Now, maybe there's some foundational things in your business you need to handle, like legal matters, logistics, foundational things, structures in place. This is the time to go back over those foundational things and improve upon them. From June 30th to November 15th, you may want to go more internal and get to what is the essence of what you want to create, what you want to offer in the world. And you'll find some deeper root of what you want to create come out. And that can make this part of your career have more staying power for the long run. For Gemini, ascendant and moon, this transit of Saturn retrograde is happening over your ninth house. And this means that this is a good time to consider any teachers or teachings that you've learned from that you want to go back to. If there's a book you really resonated with, a philosophy, a spirituality, Tao Te Ching, the Bhagavad Gita, any spiritual text or religious text, good time to go back to that and learn from it and go deeper into that text. If you can do some sort of travel to go more internal, like a meditation retreat or a yoga retreat, that's very favorable at this time. And if there is some sort of education you want to go back to or lessons you wanted to review or learn from, good time to going back to school and getting some deeper education at this time. Teachers and guides that you've learned from in the past will be very beneficial for you. If they're even YouTube teacher or a book you've read or someone you know personally, a mentor or guide, check back in, go back to them, learn from them, and you'll likely have some great support throughout this transit of these 5 months. For Cancer, ascendant and moon, Saturn is going over your eighth house retrograde now. And you've likely been going through some very big transformation over the last 2 years with this Saturn in eighth house transit. And right now is the last little bit of it to really go back over what you've learned and how you've grown. And if there is some sort of deeper personal work you've done that you resonate with, a good time to reconnect to that. Maybe it's a spiritual practice, tantric practice, a yogic practice, kundalini, astrology, tarot, these more occult sides of yourself that you've studied and learned from. This is the time to go deeper into that and get the last real big juice out of this lemon, because this is potentially one of the most transformational 2.5 year times of Saturn and Aquarius here from 2022 to early 25 that you'll go through in your life. So it can be one of the most challenging times as well. Sometimes it's considered very inauspicious when Saturn's here, but if you're on a spiritual path and you're willing to see everything as an opportunity to learn and a test for your own personal growth, it's one of the best times in life. And you learn and grow and mature so much from it. So this is the time to go deeper into those life lessons and do that deeper transformational work. 5 months here to go into, if there's a container you can get a part of, like an astrology training or a tarot training or some sort of similar, like deeper esoteric teaching that you really resonate with, this is a good time to do that from June 30th until November 15th, excuse me. For Leo, ascendant and moon, this transit of Saturn retrograde is going over your seventh house. Now, you've been learning major life lessons over the last 2 years about relationships, where you hold on too much, where you don't hold on enough, where you're too controlling, where you don't have boundaries, where you need to have boundaries. And now is the last little bit of this lesson where you'll get tested and shown where you need to set boundaries in relationship, where you need to be more grounded and practical, where you need to clarify your desires and wants in relationship and your needs. And you've had to learn hard lessons of not that, not this, that's not quite it. Okay, that's it. That's it. That's the one. Okay, that's not it. So a lot of lessons that test you and challenge you. And how do you deal with this circumstance? How do you deal with that circumstance in relationship? And it's a sort of heaviness on relationships here, and it will lighten a lot. And when Saturn moves on in early 2025, it'll move into your eighth house, which will bring about deep transformation and personal growth and take away some of this heaviness on the relationships. But while it's here, it doesn't have to be so heavy. It could be an opportunity to look within and go to the roots of why things feel so heavy and the roots of what's causing these issues in your life and what you can learn from it and how you can approach it in this way to better understand yourself and take these deeper life lessons going forward. And it could potentially be a catalyst for lifelong commitment. So, Saturn in the seventh house can also mean deep, long term, lasting commitment when you work through the karmas and the lessons and the blocks in the way. But you've got to clarify your boundaries and needs here. And that's what this is teaching you. And you can repeat the patterns or you can change them with the retrograde. And you'll get to see them again over the 5 months and then even maybe one more time in the 5 months following that from November until early 2025. For Virgo, rising and moon sign, this transit of Saturn retrograde in Aquarius is over your sixth house of health, wellness, debts, enemies, and inescapable past karma, prarabdha karma. So when you have planets transiting here, particularly Saturn, which has to do a lot with karma, there's some major things to learn about your health and wellness here. So, me as a Virgo rising, I've had some very interesting health challenges, things I've never experienced before in my life, around my spine and around my kidneys, this most recently, and health issues that just require attention and require you to learn life lessons. So you may be experiencing that yourself as well. Major life lessons around the sixth house for you that may express as your health and wellness, and you need to address health obstacles and challenge that you never foresaw before. And as it goes retrograde now, you got to go back and slow down and take more time internal for your health and your daily routines. And it's maybe putting a limit on your daily lifestyle, but it also is teaching you very important life lessons. Now, it also could appear not as your health, but as your wealth and your finances. The sixth house has to do with what you do in your day to day activities, and that includes earning an income in your work. It also includes any sort of debts or enemies that you have in your life. So, any sort of unpaid or unforeseen debts and obstacles could come up at this time. So, preparing, being proactive about that, having money in savings, having a plan if you're in debt to get out of debt, and working that plan because Saturn will reward patience and hard work. And as you persevere through the challenges and obstacles of Saturn, like an obstacle course, then you get stronger and you strengthen your sixth house to be more resilient to debts, enemies, challenges, legal disputes, health issues, and improving your day to day routine as you come out of this on November 15th. So that's how you can work with this is being proactive about these foundational issues, these structural issues in your life to do with these areas from June 30th to November 15th. For Libra ascendant and moon, Saturn is going retrograde over your fifth house. And Saturn here brings great maturity and life lessons. And if you have children, these are major life lessons about being a parent and how to navigate that part of your life. If you don't have children, then this is about navigating your inner child and how to take care of your inner child and deepening that relationship. Even if you do have children, this inner child work is always very important for everybody, but particularly for Libras right now, going deeper within to your creative essence, that spark of life, the innocence and joy of childhood, that creative, childlike part of yourself needs attention right now. And some structures and systems in place to express that part of yourself. And wherever it's felt blocked or limited, this will become very obvious during this transit. And you will see where you've created blocks and limitations for yourself and blocked your creativity. And in the same way, children actually thrive with structure. that you and your inner child can thrive with more structure for your creative process. In the same way, creativity often stems from restrictions, right? So if you have every possible resource in the world to create anything you want, it's overwhelming. But if you have just a guitar and your voice, now you've just got six strings in your voice. So many creative people, and I can say this as a musician myself, I thrive with restraints. In creative processes, it helps to have restraints. And that's Saturn in fifth house kind of energy. It's teaching you where to put restraints in your life to be more creative. And if you have every guitar in the world and every instrument in the world, now it's like overwhelming. You can do anything. But if you just have a guitar and your voice, now you have the limitations. Now you have some structure. Now you've got to be creative. You got to create within the boundaries of this plus that. And any sort of creation is just this plus that. That's how babies are made, man plus woman. You get a baby. It's creation is the same thing. It's, oh, I like this idea and that idea. What if we put them together? And a lot of musicians and artists are like this as well. Like, what if the White Stripes? It's like Led Zeppelin plus minimalism. You know, it's just that same kind of style as Led Zeppelin, but you just take away the bass guitar and some of the complications and the keyboards and things like that. Right. So that's an example of the White Stripes is like a minimalist. Led Zeppelin, and Led Zeppelin plus minimalism. So that's this plus that equals something creative. So with Saturn and Aquarius in the fifth house, also it's a time to explore any sort of old published works or things you put out into the world that you want to learn from. Maybe you review that process, what worked really well there, what can you learn from that to go forward. And if you've been thinking about having children, creating life, this may be a time to go back over what you want to do in that area and maybe reconsidering or planning or figuring out the logistics of that with Saturn in the fifth house. Because Saturn requires service and a service orientation, children require service. Creative projects require devotion and service. It's also romance. So remote romance requires devotional kind of service orientation as well. And Saturn teaches that humility, service, orientation. Chris Rock has a good joke about this. You know, if you're married, you are in the service industry. You are there to serve your partner. You're not there to get something from them. You're there to give something to them. So you can look up his bit about that if you want, but that's Saturn in the fifth house, the service towards romance. So if you feel like you're not getting enough in your romance and your relationships, it's likely you're not giving very much either. So you can turn that around and start giving more. For Scorpio, ascendant and moon, this Saturn transit's happening over your fourth house. This means there may be some issues of the home to address. Like I know somebody with this placement bought a new home recently. Now they got a lot of work to do on it. Tearing out the bathroom tiles, tearing up the kitchen, putting in new walls. That's all structural stuff. That's all Saturn in the fourth. Or another example I know needs to move, changing and ending a relationship, and now they're separating, moving home. So she's got to move to a new home. That's Saturn in the fourth. In retrograde, it's like you got to recalibrate the structure of your home, review, revise, and maybe have some restrictions around your structure of your home. Anything to do with the mother, it's a time to review, revisit, reconnect to your mom and address any issues with the mom. If you are a mother, addressing issues of being a mother and revising structural issues there as well. If you're looking for a new home with this placement, look for an older home and with mature trees, mature neighborhood, things like that, with character, old home, not a new build. In your home, you might be inspired to do some thrift store shopping and improve the home with some old things and make it feel like a more dedicated devotional place, maybe setting up an altar or a meditation practice. Having a place in your home at this time to do your practices is very important and can feel very grounding and supportive to you at this time from June 30th to November 15th, 2024. For Sagittarius, ascendant and moon, Saturn is over your third house at the moment for this transit. And from 2022 to early 2025, Saturn in the third house is actually a pretty positive placement for improving skills in your life, learning new skills, improving your communication. And sometimes the positive part comes through the hard fought lessons. So, confronting where you have communication breakdowns, needing to have conflict and resolve it. And the better you resolve it, the more you learn how to communicate better, what you really need in relationship. And you're learning a lot of new skills at this time, so very favorable for that. And now, as it's retrograde from June 30th to November 15th, it's the time to review the skills you've learned and improve upon the things that you've learned and add to them. And maybe there's something you want to do to improve your communication that's worked for you, learning a language, taking a course in communication. Any new skill is favorable at this time, especially skills that you've started in the past that you want to go deeper with, but you just scratched the surface before. Now is the time to go deeper into those skills. Time alone and meditation, pranayama and mantra, very favorable during this time to help center your energy and ground. If you feel anxiety, fear, worry, things like this, ungrounded, unsafe, this is the time to do grounding practices, get your feet on the ground, and do short walks, like walking around town. Not even short, like 2 hour walks, like around 10,000 plus steps. So if you feel yourself having the anxiety arise, walking is very favorable with this at this time. And then writing about what you think, verbally processing and writing to process what you feel and think will be very favorable with this. For Capricorn, ascendant, and moon, Saturn's over your second house, inviting you to look at matters to do with your family and your home. Now, there may be some unresolved family stuff to take care of, and this may involve personal work, like you doing the work, family constellation work, tapping, EFT, personal growth work, therapy, things like this, astrology, to go deep into understanding your family and healing that stuff for yourself. And then it may also heal for the family. There could be some issues with your diet at this time, more restrictions around your food, more food sensitivities, food allergies, and that you need to go back to be more aware, more cautious, more intentional about these food sensitivities from June 30th to November 15th. Could even be some sort of eating disorder at this time, to being aware if anxiety or fear arises around your food and what you eat, to get some sort of support from some sort of mentor or guide who's worked through those issues. Guides, mentors, teachers, supportive family members are very helpful during this time. And if there's any sort of family assets to address, family issues to address, they have been coming up over the last 2 years, and this may be the last of it, where you can resolve some of that and get to some sort of conclusion with it by early 2025. For Aquarius, rising and moon, this transit's happening over your first house. Big deal when transits happen over your first house, Saturn transits. They have you go through major life changes, like moving to different countries, divorces, breakups, major moves. And I know all the Aquariuses I know going through things like this, a new child, like the big life things that we talk about as like, big life landmarks, graduating college, starting a new career path. These kind of things happen when Saturn goes over your first house. So since 2022 until early 2025, the Aquarius rising and moons, you're experiencing this. And now, as it goes retrograde for the last time here, it's time to go back over and review and revise and revisit the lessons you've learned in those areas and get the gold. So, okay, yeah, you've gone through some big stuff, moving across the world, ending a marriage, calling things off, starting things up, big life changes, new homes, starting buying a new home, these kind of things. Now, okay, what have you learned from it? And how has it changed you? And integrating and processing those lessons. So, over this 5 months, you'll be confronted with any last residual effects of that, of like what you need to bring closure to, a little last test. Like, are you sure? Do you want to go back? You sure you don't want to go back to that way of being? And you get to choose. Or are you sure you don't want to go this way? And now you get tested. And there's no answer to these tests. It's just lessons, right? So either way, you choose A or B, you get a life lesson. And if you don't like how it feels, probably you don't want to choose that lesson again, right? So that's it. It's not like there's a right answer, but there's a painful answer. And there's a lesson that is out of alignment of your integrity, of your truth, and your soul's essence. There's an answer that is in alignment, that sings, that feels harmonious, it feels life giving. And that's the direction to go. So for you, this is about new ways of thinking, new ideals, new values in your life, new circumstances. It is a huge opportunity to just change and uproot everything if you haven't already. And some people experience these transits more at the tail end, but everyone I know personally, of the as Aquarius ascendant and moon, has already gone through this. But towards the tail end, there still could be some residual big changes. And really processing that, like taking some time to like sit down, meditate, take a day where you don't do anything else, just process it, like, whoa, what did you just go through? This has been a big 2 years. Like, digest it, let it sink in, journal about it, talk to someone about it, get an astrology reading, get therapy, journal, meditate, digest it, let it sink in, because you're moving on to a new phase now in 2025. Now, for the Pisces ascendant and moon, this has happened over your 12th house of Saturn and Aquarius since 2022 until 2025. And now it's retrograde in your 12th house. So if there's old baggage, old stuff, you moved, you changed home, you changed the environment, you got some old stuff to let go of, and you haven't yet, this is the time where that old stuff is going to come up for you to let it go. It's humbling, it's challenging, it's life lessons of like, where are you still holding on to some part of your identity, some structure in your life, some system that actually doesn't work anymore, that it's time to let it go. It is humbling, it is challenging, and it will have you grow and mature immensely. So it's a great time to do yoga practices, meditation practices, spiritual practices, tantric practices, harnessing your sexual energy. The 12th house is about moksha, liberation, which we experience through euphoric experiences like meditation, like sexual experiences, like kundalini awakening, like incredible yoga practices. You can experience this. You can also be drugs. So if you had any challenges with substances, this can come up at a time, and it can be quite intense, where you face the consequences of those substances if you're using them in a way that is in any way harmful to you. Now, of course, there's ways you can use substances recreationally and beneficially to you. In India, there's plenty of yogis who smoke marijuana religiously, or in the Rastafarian tradition, it's marijuana is a sacred herb used religiously and very frequently. So if that's part of your path, then that's part of your path. And that is moksha, that is 12th house. So it's really up to you and your inner guidance system and the people around you, and and the effects of what you do, to really show you like if something is serving you or not. Sometimes your judgment can be literally clouded, so you might not always see that clearly for yourself. But if you're causing harm to others around you using substances, then this is a time where the effects of that will become very obvious. And yes, this can also include using things like sex and yogic practices and spiritual practices as an escape in a addictive way. And that comes to the light where you've got to address it, of like, okay, you meditate and that's great, but are you addressing your children's needs, and are you using it as a way to escape and sort of bypass your practical needs? 12th house is opposite of the 6th house of your day-to-day activities, your practical needs. And when you got this strong 12th house stuff going on, you can be more drawn to put attention there and end up putting more attention and energy into 12th house stuff. going to sound healings and getting healing ceremonies and doing Reiki and all this is beautiful. But there's a certain threshold where it's now becoming an escape and a drug in itself. And you're bypassing and not dealing with the day to day activities of your finances, your family, your children, your resources, health, things like that. So only you can know where that line is. But also, the 12th house is the time to let go of physical things you don't need anymore. I've tested this myself. It's other things in my chart, but when the 12th house transits come around, I've got to let stuff go. And I end up living a very minimalist life. And I find it very important to proactively let stuff go when the 12th house transits come around. So it's an opportunity to do that for you, to let the 12th house transits, let the 12th house transit be an opportunity to let go of the things that are no longer serving you physically, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, all levels. So that's our look at the 12 signs. And again, you listen to your rising and moon. Listen for people you know personally, not just your own, because it's really fascinating to watch these things play out for people around you. And you see the sort of magic, and it's just crazy how accurate this stuff is. So every time I'm doing this, I'm looking at my list of people. I've got a lot of people close to me I know with all these placements. So for each placement, each of the 12, and I can just talk to them, check in, like, hey, are you experiencing this? Yep. How'd you know? Well, five of you other Pisces people are also experiencing this. So I do my best to do the research and stay on top of this. And maybe some of it's not entirely accurate for you. And if it's not, there's other stuff in your chart to look at. Maybe it's pointing to other factors canceling it out. And I aim to be accurate at least 80% of the time and do my best to support you in your understanding of astrology and how to apply it to your life. So if you find it helpful, take a moment, leave a review in Apple Podcast, share it with a friend, leave a rating in Spotify, and I look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast.